There we go.
There we go.
My connection doesn't seem to be so fast, but we'll see. We'll see how it rolls here.
Yeah, most of the time it works pretty well, but yeah, like you said, we'll have to see. I just, like a couple of months ago, we got fiber out here in my studio. So before that, it's always been very slow with almost everything. But now, crossing my fingers.
Maybe there's a touch of delay too, because you are, a little farther away from me.
A little further. You're in, where is it, Michigan?
Michigan, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I came to my office too because the connection here is better than it is at my home, that's for sure.
Yeah, oh, I appreciate that. And here it's just more quiet out here because there are no kids here.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah, for sure.
But the connection is pretty good. So, but it was a bit troublesome before we got the fiber. Whenever you record stuff, it's always massive files, and you record, and it's, yeah, can you send it to me? Yeah, sure. You'll get it in a couple of hours.
Yeah, one of these days.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, Todd, thank you very much for joining in.
Yeah.
You are my 10th guest on this, so it's at least for me, it's a tiny bit of a celebration, and I'm very happy that you joined in. I always try to make some half humorous introduction and presentation for people who might not know you. And if there are people here who haven't heard Todd sing, imagine if Lou Gramm and Bruce Dickinson had a kid that was raised by Jeff Tate.
That might work. Probably not too bad. I don't know. Lou Gramm has lots of tone that I don't feel like I have, but certainly I definitely OD'd on Jeff Tate back in my day, that's for sure. Less so more lately, but I remember in the 80s, like, wow. I just spent a lot of time listening to him.
Yeah.
And singing along with him, actually. That was kind of how I used to kind of practice, and that's really kind of how I learned to sing, basically singing along with other people, really.
And that, this little podcast or live streams or whatever we call it, I call them voice chat also because that's what we talk about, the voice and the singing. And when you talk about the 80s, I try not to be too strict about the order of things that we talk about, but since you brought it up, Harlot.
That's a long time ago.
When was the last time you listened to it?
I have it on my iPod, and a lot of times I travel around with my iPod on random, and the songs will pop up. And what's funny is it depends on the mood I'm in, because sometimes when it pops up, I'm like, click, and I just forward it. And then sometimes I'll listen through to it. It's funny because it was just so long ago. I was like 18 years old, I think, when we recorded that album, and 25 Gets a Ride. And, I think I'm really, really proud of the album, but I feel like now I feel like I can see the youth. And I mean, certainly for me as a singer, I feel like the songwriting, I know where my brother was at the time, and he was, I feel like the songwriting's not as mature as obviously it could have been. And the compositions weren't maybe arranged and everything was, you know what I mean? So I think as a musician, you look back at some of your stuff and you'll second guess it. I mean, I think for even me as a singer, I look back and I think, oh my Lord, why did you do that? And, because I think, I don't know, I have this belief that when people are younger, they want to kind of impress everybody with their abilities. And I think as you get old, maybe it stays that way for people. I think for me, I feel like I've experienced that, So on Harlot, I think it was like I just wanted to be this really high singer and impress everybody with these high notes I could do and how long I could hold them and whatnot have you. And then I think nowadays I'm not necessarily cringe at that, but that's really not on my mind. And there's always going to be someone that can sing high and this and that. Really, I just want to write a good song now. It's pretty much my goal. I want people to sing along. I love to listen to music. I love music to move me. I love to sing along to music, and so that's really my goal, is to write something that people want to sing along with.
But do you? I mean, like you say, each and every one of us have stuff that when we look back, you know, we feel more or less bad about it or proud about it. But I could tell now that when you listen to it now or talk about it now, that you are more in the line of being proud of it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But did you have a time period where you would cringe more about it than you do now? Because now you have the distance.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, I think I reached a point too where, you know, the name, I mean, while I never really felt like the name Harlot actually came about, because so I was in a band with my brother when I was 15 and we were called Wrought Iron. And we did cover tunes. And then after I was only in the band for like 6 months when I was 15 years old, and we used to play shows and stuff at some bars here in the mid-Michigan area. And what happened is then when I got out, I don't even know why I got out of the band, but I got out of the band and they kind of kept going. And then somehow they transitioned and changed the name of the band to Harlot. And then I ended up getting in the band. And I don't know, I guess at the time I would say that's the thing I feel the weirdest about now, because the Harlot, well, it's spelled Harlet. So real Harlot is spelled Harlot, and why maybe someone didn't know how to spell, or I don't know. There was a guy named Dave Katowski who was a guitar player. I thought somebody told me he was the one that thought of the name. But in any event, it means whore. And at this point in my life, I really don't want to be in a band called Whore. You know what I mean? And I think I was more embarrassed about that earlier. And now I'm just like, well, it was kind of a phase. You know what I mean? It was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What can I do? I think there are times when there's things you've done. And I mean, you know, well, I did it. And you know, it's not like you know, I guess it wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? Not like I murdered anybody or anything. So.
No.
But I would say that's probably the thing I feel the weirdest about is just, you know, the maybe even some of the topics on the songs. Just I'm in a different place now. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But vocal-wise, I mean, to me, this is a very impressive performance from an 18-year-old dude.
Yeah, I mean, I thought vocally wise, you know, there was, you know, like I said, I think melodically speaking, there were times when I would go high that I really didn't need to, and I'd start the song with a scream, and I'd end the song with a scream, and have a scream at the climax, and you know, whatever. Of course, I say scream, and when I say scream, I really don't mean a high note. I'm not necessarily screaming, but I think for me, I listen to it though, and I wonder, like when I listen to it, it's funny. I sit and think, God, could I sing that now? But what's interesting is I know that I can sing better now than I did then. I just have, you know, from all the years of studio and certainly live shows. Back then, that's one thing that people do not realize when it comes to singing is that live singing is like a whole nother thing, you know. You being able to sing in the studio, that's one thing. You can kind of go a little nuts if you want and maybe oversing. You just can't do that live. And when my 18, 19, and 20-year-old self, I would go play these shows, you know, at nightclubs in Detroit, and man, we were only doing an opener set or whatever, and by the end of the set, I was already struggling. I actually recently, when my brother passed away last year, I was looking through a bunch of old stuff, and I found this old, weird, I don't even know what kind of videotape it was. It was this old, somebody with like a professional, whatever, camera had filmed this video, and so I paid like a bunch, you know, $100 or whatever to have this video put onto a DVD so I could watch it. And the video quality wasn't that good, but man, I was listening to me, and we were playing at Blondie's down in Detroit, and I was like, oh my God, I was listening to my voice, and I'm like cracking, I'm squeaking, my voice is breaking, like all over the place. But it was because down in Detroit at Blondie's, like you could never hear yourself in the monitors, and that was at a time when I hadn't learned how to use, you know, earplugs to help hear myself better. I hadn't learned how to control myself well live, that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think on the album there's certainly some good stuff. I feel like my live performances back then are certainly not as good as they are now, and you know, so I don't know. It's weird. I think, you know, it's hard for me to say. I feel like I'm a better singer than I was then, though.
Yeah, I would agree with no disrespect, because I listen to a lot of your stuff, including the Harlot album now, and what strikes me the most is probably the control, the control of your vocals today, and it's more even. I don't know the perfect English word for it, but you know, today, when I listen to the stuff you do today, like your solo album or stuff like that, it's more even. It's the same sound throughout the entire register. And on the Harlot album, you have a deeper sound on the lower stuff and a sharper sound on the higher stuff. So it's like your EQ settings are better now.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. It's like it's more of a, and that's one of the hard things about singing and singing in upper register, all that is learning how to control that. I think at that point, like I had just learned how to, I think I learned, I did my first kind of head voice high note when I was, I think 16 or maybe approaching 17, I think. The first note I ever did was the beginning of Take Hold of the Flame. I remember listening to that and being really excited and running home and saying to my brothers, man, I can hit this note. I'm like, oh yeah. And we ran up in our bedroom, and my brother Rick and I shared a bedroom, and well, actually John, Rick and I all did until he turned 14 and decided he wanted to live in the basement instead. But we put the album up on Rick's stereo. And they played the beginning. I'm like, play the beginning and I'll sing it for you. And I sang it, and I hit the note, whatever, and then they just kind of went and then walked away, like they didn't really care, But the funny thing is, it wasn't long after that my brother John was like, hey, we're gonna do all originals, and I want you to sing in the band. So that was kind of cool, I thought. So it must have impressed him somehow. My brother John, he was never someone to communicate his feelings very much. And so, I know that, and no offense to any of my other bands, but he's like, oh, Jack Stark's Reverence sucks. Like, he never liked anything that I did, But when I got in Riot, because John was a fan of like the Fire Down Under album and stuff like that, when I got in Riot, I think in John's mind, that meant I kind of made it, so to speak. And while he never really told me that, I would find out because people would tell me stories, like he'd be whatever at a bar or whatever, and he'd be telling me, and people would be like, oh yeah, John was telling me all about how you're playing these shows all around the world and stuff. So that part was kind of interesting. So I guess I impressed him, even though he never told me. Yeah,
and about brothers and sisters, you have a facade, or like you have to keep it up against your brothers and sisters.
Well, I think it runs the gamut, with families, and not everybody's the same, but there's those things where, okay, a lot of families will talk about having the quirky brother or the quirky sister or whatever, and stuff like that happens. I think like I said with John, he just he was never good at sharing his feelings, so that was the weird part for me. I mean, I remember even too, because like I would put a lot of time and effort in the lyrics of the songs. And I would ask John, like, hey, I thought the lyrics for this turned out pretty good. What did you think? He's like, I don't listen to lyrics. I mean, thanks. Which is totally not true, because, he wrote some lyrics, but he was a different writer than me. My brother John was really creative, really, just a really, really interesting, creative fella. In all rights, he was more of an artist than I am, that's for sure. And he had that mechanical, hands-on ability that my dad has, to build things and make things. He built me custom Harley and da-da-da. So yeah. So I miss him a lot. I don't know how I got on John, but in any event, there you go.
Yeah, but that's all fine. But he was a couple of years older than you, right?
He was 4 years older than me, yeah.
Yeah. So he was the one to kind of introduce you to the more rockish kind of music, or did you find out about that yourself?
Well, interestingly enough, my mom was pretty diverse in her, because we here in Michigan, we have something called going up north, right? And it's like on the weekends or whatever have you, travel up north to like a more remote place, maybe by a lake, preferably, that sort of thing. And in my family, just so happened, my grandma was from a little town up north called Mackinac City. That's where my mom grew up. And so we would take a lot of these 2.5, 3 hour trips in the car. And we had this old Cadillac with an 8-track player, and all the kids piled into it. And that's back when they just had bench seats, in the front and the back. There were no car seats. And Mom's playing on the brake. The arms would come out to try to prevent you from flying out the window. And the thing is, I remember everybody just singing along and jamming to music. And a lot of times my dad wasn't in the car. He was working a lot, or he'd drive separate. I don't know what it was, but it would be Mom and us 4 kids, because my little sister Christina wasn't around yet, because she's 13 years younger than me. And we'd be driving up, but what was interesting is she would have like Tom T. Hall, which is like a country guy. She'd have Mac Davis, another country guy. She had the band Bread, which I don't know if most people know it. I always thought their name was Best of Bread because the album we had was called The Best of Bread. It's a great little kind of pop band with little falsetto singing. Was kind of a hit band in the 70s. But we had like Kiss, Kiss Alive 2. We had Deep Purple. We had the Rolling Stones. So I think I got exposed to some of that. But when I was younger, in that age, like in that 9 to 13 range, when I was taking piano lessons, when I first started taking piano, I remember being in love with like Lionel Richie and Barry Manilow and stuff like that. And God forbid I even admit it now, right? But I used to love those guys. So yeah, definitely John was the one that probably really exposed me, because my brother John got into playing guitar when he was pretty young. And then I think his first love was like Ted Nugent. We had some friends friends of the family that took him to see Ted Nugent when he was only like 13 years old or something. And so Ted Nugent was always jamming. The living room of our house, we had this, and probably if you're older, you'll know what I'm talking about. We had this big, it was like a giant, it was probably 6 foot long. Like I'm trying to spread my arms, you can't see my arms, but oh well. I like to talk to my hands. But it was this, it was like this long. That doesn't make it look big. It was like 6 foot long, and it was this giant cabinet with a lid that would lift up in the center, and the speakers were built into the ends. And so it looked like this big piece of furniture, but inside was like a turntable, and it was on springs, so it bounced around it would jiggle around and stuff. And that's where we, jammed. And I remember John jamming that. And then my brother Rick got into the scene too. He's a year and a half older than me. And he was the one that was like Styx and REO Speedwagon. But my mom had bought the Queen album, Something of the World, whatever. It had We Are the Champions on it.
And News of the World.
Yeah. And so we had that. And just Van Halen. My brother actually really loved Van Halen too. So that was really kind of the beginning of it for me. And then I remember around 1983, 84, that's when I got like my first vinyl. I got Man of War, Hail to England vinyl for my birthday. And that's what, I think I was 13 or 14. And then my brother Rick actually really is the one that turned me on to Queensryche, because he played the Queen of the Reich EP for me. He's like, listen to this. And I'm like, hey, that's not too bad. That's pretty good. But then I went to see Queensryche open up for Kiss on the Animalize tour, and they were on the Warning album. And man, I was down. I was toward the side, but I was, only about 8 people away from the audience in this, this Saginaw Civic Center was called at the time, that holds about 7,000 people, I think it's supposed to. And just watching Jeff just nail the notes, it just had a major impression on me. So, but yeah, so John definitely got me started, but I think it didn't take much, because, in the 80s, it was really the glory days for rock. I mean, 70s probably a lot too, but in the 80s, that's when it shifted over to what I would call more the heavy metal genre, I guess you'd say. And yeah, didn't take much to make you like the music then, because it was just all over the place,
Yeah. So this was kind of when you started out just singing along, and you told the story about when you when you found the note and you showed your brother. But do you remember like a breaking point when you realized that, well, I can hit the notes and not everyone else can do it? And I don't mean just the high notes. I mean, holding a note, keeping to the key and all that.
I think for me, I'd been singing when I was very little. My mom told me a story that one time when I was in kindergarten, so I'd have been about 5 years old, that the teacher told her, hey, in choir or whatever, he sings well. He can sing in key and stuff. He sings really well. You should give him some music lessons or whatever. And so later on, that's why Mom talked me into taking piano lessons. And so I guess the interesting thing for me is singing in a way came natural. And like, I sing a lot. Like when people in my office probably get annoyed, because when I walk up the stairs, if I've been listening to a song, I'm still singing, and on my way, I sing when I walk around. I just tend to sing a lot. And I think what happened is like, I always sang. And then when I was getting a little older, obviously as a little boy, I had a really high voice, So like we had this thing here in Michigan, where I'm from, we had a thing called academic track. And it was like this, almost like an athletic track meet, but it was all with academics. But they also include some things like art, and they included singing and quartets and stuff like that. And so I remember doing academic track when I was like in 7th and 8th grade. And in 7th grade, I sang the theme from Annie. It's a song, Tomorrow, Tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. That one. I mean, I sang that in full-on little boy voice, a cappella actually too, and in the original key. So like I had this really, really high voice. And then what happened is I was kind of a late bloomer. So long about the time I was 15, that's when I was going through puberty. And I don't really remember a point where my voice was like cracking all the time or anything like that. But I do know that when I first sang with Wrought Iron, doing the cover tunes, I didn't have the ability to sing the really high notes, the head voice stuff. I mean, I had a reasonably high voice. I'm not I don't know if I'm a tenor, but I don't know, I guess technically I might be, I don't know. But I mean, I could sing reasonably high, but I remember there would be songs that I would have trouble singing, we'd play Dokken or whatever have you. And some of the higher notes I couldn't do. And so, yeah, so there was that point so I always felt like I was a singer or whatever. And I was always kind of into performing. I just enjoyed that part. But I think later on, then when I hit the high notes and started learning how to fill in some of the notes in between and learning how to pronounce and stuff, I thought, okay, I mean, it seemed, how do you say this without it sounding arrogant? But like when I would go play shows, I was doing things that other people weren't doing. I mean, so whether so I don't want to sound arrogant, but yeah, we'd go play a show in Detroit and the other bands weren't hitting notes like I was hitting notes. So I guess it made me feel like I was at least a little unique in that regard.
Yeah, and but then later on, you were this is like your teens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a kind of not a gap, but kind of a jump up to the Jack Starr and Reverence kind of stuff. You've done some other stuff in between, but I guess that's like for most of us the jump or the gap with starting family, getting a house, work, car, whatever, spending time doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was. What happened is, so I was in Harlot, and we were playing shows right until I graduated college. So I was 21 years old. It was 1991. And at that point, my brother John was always wafting, he wouldn't stay like in one, a lot of times to be popular, you kind of got to be a little more laser focused in what you're trying to accomplish. And if you keep changing your style, then it's hard for you to build an audience because you keep losing some people if you're changing. And my brother John had a little bit of that in him. He would be influenced by stuff and want to change his style a little bit. And so, but in 91, and then we always struggled with, especially being from Saginaw, where I'm from, because it's a small town. We had to drive almost 2 hours to get to Detroit for nightclubs. Flint's only about 45, but there wasn't much for nightclubs there. Contos, and that was about it. And so in order to play out more, my brother John, when I graduated from college, John said, hey, let's play cover tunes, and we'll do that while we write songs for our next album. And the problem is once you get on the cover tune treadmill, it's kind of hard to be creative with anything else because between work and cover tunes and this and that, you're just too busy. And so we did cover tunes for a little while, but we finally did record an album, and we finished it in 1994. But by that time, we kind of felt like we had outgrown the name Harlot. So we actually changed the name of the band right before we released it to Pulling Teeth, which, I mean, hindsight was probably stupid because then all the people that knew us as Harlot. But I mean, back then, oddly enough, no one knew us as Harlot. I mean, really, probably nobody knows Harlot anyway, but no one really knew us as Harlot because people in Europe didn't find out about Harlot until well into the 90s and later when they started cultivating and looking and trying to mine for more 80s metal. Because our CDs were never over there at first. It wasn't until the mid-90s that this year I was trying to sell my Pulling Teeth CDs, and the distributor here said, hey, I'd like some of those Harlot ones too. And so I gave him 50 or 100 of the Harlot CDs, and then he never paid me for them, and he shipped them out to Japan and to Europe. So that's how we ended up getting kind of known a little bit for that. Not that it's very well known. So what happened then is, so I released the Pulling Teeth album. We were playing some shows to support it, but then like the drummer got flaky and quit, and we got a different drummer, and then that drummer got flaky, and things got weird. And then my brother John, he was listening to more and more Pantera, and he came to me and said, yeah, he went through this Pantera phase where he was just in love with Pantera. And you know, it's cool. I thought Cowboys from Hell was a decent album, but Phil, there was something about Phil. There was something about Phil that I don't know. He has a really aggressive voice. I couldn't sing like that at all. And so John, I remember John coming to me and saying, "Hey, look, you need to sing more like this." And I just said, "John, like that's not possible for me. Like that's impossible." And so, oh, and by the way, I did, and this was about 10 years later, buy a CD called the Zen of Screaming that some lady, I can't even remember her name, but she sells this. I think it's called the Zen of Screaming. And I actually, yeah, and actually it was in the aughts. I bought that, and that was when Harlot was back playing cover tunes around 2006. And I tried her technique and stuff, and it I don't want to say it tore my throat up, but I don't want to like totally lambaste the lady, but it didn't work for me at all. And in fact, it kind of hurt. I could tell it was hurting my voice. So I just quit trying it like right away. Because I thought, you know, hey, if you're going to be a singer, why not expand your repertoire and learn how to sing that? But I have a very like hopelessly clean voice. It's very difficult for me to get any sort of rasp in my voice. But even when John told me, sorry, I ramble. When John told me that he wanted me to sing like that, that's when I was like, look, we probably, you know, just need to be done. And so that was around 1996. And I didn't really do much after that. I played my buddy Jim Pagel, who's a great guitar player and had played in Harlot for a couple of years when we did our 1990 demo. So there's 4 bonus songs on the re-release version of Harlot, and Jim Pagel's on that. He had kind of a lounge act thing going, and I started taking guitar lessons from him in 1996. So we did this lounge act thing a couple times where I would just go out once a week just for some fun and play some shows, play a couple songs with him. Nothing I was taking very seriously. But other than that, no, I didn't do anything because there wasn't really anybody wanting to do anything with me, oddly enough. Like nobody was really pounding on my door or anything. And I was busy at work. I ended up getting married in 1999 and that sort of thing. And then in the early aughts, I think that's when I started thinking, yeah, it might be nice to try to do something again. And my brother Rick showed me a posting for Jack Starr looking for a singer, and that's kind of how I got back in. That was in 2004, I believe, that I mailed in my CD, and they had heard it. And Joey DeMeo from Man of War really liked my voice, and you know, called me up or had his assistant call me up and schedule a call with me, and then I was on the phone with Joey DeMeo, and I don't know. There's a lot of people that probably think Man of War's corny. I have a lot of respect for Joey and Eric and everybody in the band. I just think I really love, especially their first, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 albums. They're just really, really awesome albums for me. And Eric Adams, I think, is one of the quintessentially most awesome singers the world's ever seen. I mean, his ability to sing like that kind of gravelly, raspy, kind of animalistic type thing to doing very beautiful, clean opera is unparalleled.
He kind of sounds like he's standing on the top of a mountain singing out into, you know, it's like when you hear his voice, it's like he's not in the studio.
No,
he's always on stage.
Yeah, he's absolutely amazing, and I've seen him live a number of times. Obviously, I had the good fortune of later on when I played the Magic Circle festivals, I had my little boyhood fantasies come true because like he was like, well, first of all, when I flew there in 2004, I think it was, I told Joey, like, because I went to their studio and I told Joey, I said, look, man, I'm a huge fan of Eric. I would really love to meet him while I'm there. And so while I was there recording, I was kind of recording vocals, but it was more like I was there just to demo things out, see what was going on. But while I was there, and I remember it was like Day of the Reaper was the song I was in the, and they had the studio going. It's more like your movie studio thing where there's the glass and the control boards on this side and you're in that side and whatnot have you. And yeah, and there I am singing, and Eric Adams is sitting next to the sound man Dirk, and he's you know bobbing his head along and listening to me, and ow, that was a little nerve-wracking to be laying it down in front of, you know, I don't really call anyone my idol because I feel like that's a weird word, but man, someone that you really greatly love their voice and respect their ability that much to be, you know, so that was a fun moment. And then later on when we played live shows like 2008 and 2009, we played the Magic Circle Festival. You know, to have Joey and Carl, the guitar player at the time, and Eric, you know, standing next to the stage. Even Rhino was there too. I mean, you know, to have them standing next to the stage while Burning Star was playing and watching us perform, that was pretty mind blowing too. So.
Yeah, I can totally understand. We get a lot of praise here in the chat. People who commend you for everything you've done. And we also have some friends checking in. We have Tommy, another Swedish singer who wasn't a guest here earlier, who said hi. Amazing people showing up. But yeah, and I can tell I've had kind of the same experience, with having. I even had one of my heroes produce an album. Sitting, listening, and choosing takes, and Tom Englund from Evergrey, the Swedish band, and when I don't know about you, but whenever I'm recording and choosing takes is the worst thing I know.
Oh, yeah.
Like 3 or 4 takes of the chorus, and like, yeah, which one do you like the most? I like none of them. Thank you.
I am amazingly nitpicky because now I have the joy of I record at home and people just have no idea what I go through. I'll be sitting there listening to it and technically speaking, I don't think anyone else could hear the difference, but for me, I can. There's just a little quality, a little something there. But you mentioned that, and actually that's what I have when I recorded the Defiance album. Not all of it, but like a good chunk of it. Joey DeMeo was sitting there at the control board with Dirk, who was the engineer. And Joey was sitting there listening to me sing. And I remember it was really funny. There was this one time, there was a take, and I was doing exactly that. Joey's like, I did a first take on something. And Joey is like, oh, that sounds great. We'll just keep that. And I'm like, are you sure? And he goes, well, Todd. and so we listened to it back, and I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And I don't know if you know Joey, he's actually a very friendly person in person. And what was funny is he started saying, hey, there's this guy in the Bible, and he talks to me about doubting Thomas, and he started calling me doubting Thomas because he's like, look, I heard it. It sounded great. I liked it, So it was kind of funny. But yeah, it was a little nerve wracking too, I wanted to please him. I wanted to make him, happy and proud of me. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can totally get at it. I've started to do sometimes when especially when it's like session stuff, when I don't have the vision, like because if you're in a band or like if you're very into the project, you know what they're after. But if it's just a session thing, I've started to do it like this, that I record like 4 or 5 takes of everything, and I send it to him and let the producer choose it, because when it's long distance recording projects, I send my takes, and then it will take a day for him before he can listen to it, and then 1 day before he has the time to answer, and then after that it's like 2 days before I have time to go out to the studio, and then it's like those takes sucked, so I had to do it the day after, and then I send it to him, and then it takes another. So it's like 2 weeks. And then it's like, okay, maybe, but we need to change this part too.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely understand. I think for me, for the most part with my vocal, like I know what I want. So, I certainly would listen to a producer. I would listen to someone else, but I don't think there's a bigger critic on my voice than me in terms of listening to it and knowing. And I think you and I are on the same wavelength. I don't know if the average person is listening to, but just listening to the way you hold out a note and the resonance of the note and the way you go up into the note and the inflection and the way you go from one word to the word, how you pronounce it, the actual pronunciation, all those little tweaky things, make a big difference for me. I had done a little bit of what you said though, like when I do a kind of a guest vocal spot. I know I did that for Bart, for Marta Gabriel. I did something, and so what I did is I sent Bart and Marta 2 takes of a song. And the funny thing, they probably can't tell the difference, but I'm like, look, on this one, I'm pushing harder. It's a little more edgy, and I'm trying to sound a little more, distorted. This one's more of a clean approach. Which one do you like better? And I sent it to them. So I've done a little bit of that. I would say, and I don't know if you do a lot of backup vocals, so maybe you've experienced the same thing. for me, one of the most time-consuming things is because I do a lot of these choir things too, where I'm doing the SATB parts and I do 4 of each and da-da. And I am an absolute stickler for the notes kind of like ending at the same time. And a lot of music, there's even on regular songs, there's a lot of doubled vocals, you know, and I cannot tell you how many times I'll redo a take because I just want it to end, because you'll go back and listen to it and you'll be like, oh, you know, and I don't know if people understand that, because there's echo, or, you know, effects that you can put on stuff, but you can also get a choral effect by having more than one voice in the track. And so obviously I'll do that on choruses when I have you. But yeah, I just want it to be the same. And nothing's worse when you're trying to double like some big long note you've held, and it's like kind of a tiring note too. And then you're like, damn, and it's, you know, you end just at the wrong spot, and you're like, crap, I got to do it over, you know.
You know, you never want those long notes to end with a consonant, because you because then you have to be very precise about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, because when you do those choirs, you know, it's awesome to have I always do like a little difference in tone and timbre, but like exactly like you say, you want the pronunciation to be exact and precise, and that's kind of what makes the difference of a great or super great choir for me, you know, when you listen to. But then, you know, back in the day, if you listen to like Iron Maiden stuff, like the Summer in Time album, you can hear like, because I listened to it a couple of days ago, you can hear like some backing vocals are not really in time.
They're totally out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, and I think what it is it's a function of kind of like the more modern generation of recording, because we get so nitpicky. I mean, quantized, everything is, and so you reach the point, that's one of the things is, just because you can do it, should you do it? You know, when I'm in the studio, yeah, I can sit and redo it until, like, I don't cheat and copy, you know, or whatever. I mean, like, I'll actually perform it, but I'll do it. If I can't get it that day, I'll come back the next day, whatever, and I'll just keep going until I get it. Whereas I think back in the day, you know, I know like the first Harlot album that we recorded that in a studio on 2-inch thick reel tape, and I don't remember putting a ton of time into the vocals like I do now. I just laid it down, you know, and yeah, that sounds good, you know. And when it came to backups, you know, you just threw something on there, and you didn't, you know. Nowadays we get really, you know, really detailed and nitpicky with it, I guess. But it almost becomes the expectation, though, once people start doing that.
Yeah, and you know, once you like, if you record a couple of takes, once you start to listen very detailed, then you know you're in deep shit, because you know you will spend the next half hour listening and finding all those details. And but what I think I learned the most about this is, like you said, I do a lot of backing vocals for different singers. The having to learn to adjust to different lead singers have made me a better choir singer. Honestly, I've also been singing in church choirs since I was, you know, a kid. So, but still, I probably have to give me a sec.
Yeah, speaking of that topic, nice.
That's the
one we worked on.
Yeah,
I meant to ask you a question about that too. You know, I know you do a lot of the backup stuff, and you know, how are you doing your harmonies? Are you mapping out harmonies yourself? Are you one of those gifted people that can just hear it and kind of sing the harmony? How does that work for you?
It's kind of a combination, because I have like formal arrangement training from like the Academy of Music, so I know how to arrange choir for like a church choir and all that stuff. So I know how to do that, and I can do it in sheet music, but I never do that for like metal stuff. But I'm one of those guys who always, when I listen to music, I fill in. I always do the harmony. I always, you know, if there's a lead part, I always answer it, or I do, you know. So basically, that's what I do in the studio. Or now I'm gonna do a Swedish kind of sleaze rock and roll they probably love Harlot band. I'm gonna do. I did an album for them, but they now they needed 3 more songs, so I got 3 more songs. So first off, I will listen to those songs, like, you know, when I'm out running or when I'm driving to work. I will listen and listen and listen, and then eventually, when I've heard them a couple of times, I will start to fill in. And that's when okay, now the process is happening. And then I'll just, you know, sometimes I sit down and I find the melody, like, and then all right, so it's an F and the melody is there, so I will do the but I don't formally arrange it, but you know, I always use the piano to find, because like when you if you're singing a chorus and you're singing it in 5 different voices, you know, it's the ability to learn the melody quickly, but also forgetting it quickly.
Yeah.
Because then it's time for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. The next part. Yeah, you know, I say I'm a little jealous of your ability there. You know, I'm kind of half, you know what I mean? Like, I can listen to stuff and really feel like I hear harmony sometimes, and for a lot of my albums, you know, like the Reverence album, stuff like that, I would just I call it pulling harmonies out of my arse, you know. I basically and there are times when I'm like, okay, yeah, that wasn't so on, you know. I can listen back to stuff now. I mean, usually if it sounds off to me, I would get rid of it, you know what I mean? I wouldn't keep it. But now, actually, what happened is I started working with Francisco Palomo when I did my Letters from India album, and I asked him to arrange choir pieces for me. And so after working with him and then doing a couple Riot albums where Mike would try to then map out a harmony for me, when it came time to do I remember asking Mike questions about, because I mean, I can read sheet music and stuff. I'm not like a great guitar player or a great piano player. I'm a hack at both, you know, but I can read sheet music and I know music theory and stuff. So what I was really proud of for the Sonic Healing album, because what I did, and I do it for my solo albums, like I put out these Elements EPs. I just did it digitally, and actually I've got 14 other songs. Yeah, nice. I've got 14 other songs. I'm finishing up the studio right now, and what I did on those, especially because like I know the chords and stuff I'm playing, so I actually go through I call it mapping out the harmonies. I go through and I will play on the piano what notes I'm singing for the main vocal line, and then I'll sit and write out the notes above the lyric, and then I'll write above that the chord I'm playing, and then I'll go to that chord and say, oh well, if I'm singing a B and it's a G, I'm like, all right, I got a G and a D I can do for harmonies, you know, and so I write a harmony above and a harmony below and all that. So that's the kind of thing I did for, you know, my solo stuff, and I did so actually it's kind of funny, you know, teaching an old dog new tricks. I mean, that's why I feel like I've kind of grown as a musician, because it wasn't until really my mid to latter 40s that I learned how to map out my own harmonies. So I'm kind of pretty excited about that, you know. So the only thing that made life a little difficult for me, like when I write, I'm a little anal about staying in key as far as you know, as far as the chords and things I play. Whereas Kurt Vanderhoof, he's, you know, an awesome writer, awesome guitar player, and I would talk to him. I'm like, but Kurt, like, it sounds like you're now playing this chord and that's not in the key. And he's like, Todd, come on, music theory is just a theory. You know, that was his funny way of pushing me off, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel about it. You know, it can sometimes help you, you know, to like when you get stuck. You know, I don't, you know, I try to hear it first, but when I get stuck, then I use the music theory to like, okay, sort out how do I solve this problem, and then I do it theoretically. But I mean, teaching old dogs, I mean, it's not that it's something new to you. You have the ability to hear a melody in your mind and to sing it. So you have the ability to imagine music. And to me, that's kind of the key. And also, once again, I'm showing the one that we both appeared on. That album was kind of the game changer for me with arranging choirs, because, you know, when you do power metal, it's like, oh, so it's a B flat. Well, then I will sing every single B flat, D, and F I have in my range, and just put it in there. So doing it not the hard way, but doing it like you know, overdoing it a lot, because that's what symphonic power metal is about. And then then it's easier to take it down, because if you start small, at least to me, it's like if you start small, you have to build it up. So now I kind of started this part of my career, or whatever you want to call it, with symphonic power metal, and then I had an easier time to take it down.
Yeah, I think for me, I've gone through that too. The challenge I have, what I've found, especially when it's on music, because like I record a cappella pieces. I usually for Christmas, I've actually done it 10 years now. I think this will be my 11th year. I'll record an a cappella piece, although last year's wasn't a cappella, it had music on it, so it was one of my own, but it had piano. And what I find though is when music is involved, and you try to stack all the different layers, some of the voices disappear because you start singing the same notes that maybe the bass player's playing or somebody else. Because I remember I had this song, it was one of my originals, just acoustic singer-songwriter songs, and every time I hear it, I could hear this low voice in there going, you know. And then I went through and I sang, I'm like, oh, I got to add that. And I went through and I recorded it and I added it, but I found it didn't really pop. It didn't really stand out. It didn't really add much. And I think it was because, you know, like the bass or something was already kind of playing that. And so it just kind of buried it. So that's the hard part, is when the music in a way, you know, I don't want to say it buries the vocals, but the minute the vocals and the music are playing the same note, doing the same notes, it doesn't stick out anymore, really. And so, so it's almost like there's this point where, you know, too much is, you know, becomes, you know, doesn't add, you know what I mean? And I think like for my latest solo album, Sonic Healing, you know, for my earlier singer-songwriter solo stuff, I always liked these big sounding, huge choruses. I love lots of layers and whatnot have you. And my, like, Letters from India, every chorus on that song was like either 4 or 5 part harmonies. So, you know, on that whole album. And so, but for Sonic Healing, what I would do is I would, unless it was a really low vocal part, pretty much, I don't usually have sometimes, but pretty much all mine, I would map out a harmony that was above it and a harmony that was below it. And then I would listen to it, and I would try putting them both in there, but sometimes both in there really didn't, you know, it's, you know, and so I left a little bit of that to Kurt too, as he produced it, to kind of decide. So what I was doing is just giving him, a lot of times if it's a real high part, I'll do knock low and vice versa. But yeah, I just give him some options. One thing that I find that's, I think, odd, and I don't know if you notice it yourself, but when I write melodies, a lot of times I tend to sing the sus note, like either a sus2 or a sus4. I don't know why. So I'll be playing like I'll be playing a G chord and I'm singing an A. And so then when I go to map out the harmony, it makes it such a pain to map out the harmony, because to try to do 2 harmonies to it, the one note is too close to it. So it's like I'll find that if I'm doing a G and I sing an A, then I'll do a D high octave and a D low octave or something, because trying to do the G or the B harmony doesn't sound right, you know?
Yeah, and it can sound right on a piano, like this. Yeah. But you know, once you have the voice on it, it might. Sometimes, you know, it like you say, it's too close and it doesn't add anything, because then it's in the G chord, it's the A that adds something. So if you do these two on the other side of it, then you take away the kind of the suspended feeling. So I totally get you.
Yeah, that's my rule of thumb when I'm sitting there mapping out the harmony. Basically, what I do is I'll try to find a note, but it can't be because I want to pick a note from the chord. So I'm not as sophisticated enough to have 2 notes that aren't in the chord. You know, I'm sure it's possible, but I don't usually try that. Usually, if I'm singing a note that's not on chord, you know, ideally you're singing a note that's on chord. So if it's G, you're singing a B, and you got the D and the G to harmonize. But if I'm singing the sus note, my rule of thumb is if the note is right next to it on the piano, I'm not going to try to use that as a harmony. I have tried going like an octave lower, an octave higher, but it just never seems to work for me. But yeah, so I don't know why, as a vocalist, I like to sing those sus notes, but I find that I do that a lot. When I make up my melodies, I do. I guess I love that suspense feeling, I guess.
But this is pretty interesting to me too, because now with Sonic Healing, for example, and also with the Letters to India and the solo stuff, would you say, I don't know about the Riot V, do you write the melodies, or do you only write the lyrics?
Well, basically with Riot V, that's where I become, it just depends, you know, so I'd have to show you the song. Like the first album, Unleash the Fire, you know, there were, you know, a few songs, you know, 4, 5, 6 songs where I wrote the melodies too, as well as the lyrics. But Donnie and Mike, who write, you know, Donnie writes a bulk of the music and Mike a fair amount too. They're pretty strong in their melodic ideas too. So a lot of times, you know, but Mike, he doesn't write lyrics. So a lot of times what Mike will do is he will, he just plays his guitar along with it. And he and I have these little, I'll call them arguments, but not like we're fighting or anything, but I tell him, I'm like, Mike, you're writing melodies like a guitar player. That's a guitar solo. Like you can't, I mean, that's not what someone would sing, you know? Now I try to honor his wishes and make it happen, but there's times too when like he doesn't know about breath space and he doesn't know about, well, in that range, you need a little break because your voice is getting tired and things like that. So I've had times when I've said, look, I need to rewrite your melody a little for this reason or that reason. Because, you know, obviously on a guitar, you can just keep playing. There's no breath space, you know. Those damn guitar players.
Yeah, I actually just read an interview with Bruce Dickinson about their new album. And he kind of spilled the beans about Steve Harris's songwriting. And first off, he said like he's one of the 5 worst singers in Britain, and then it was like how can this dude have this career and know this little about the human voice? I think it was a little bit in jest, but it was like, how is this possible that you come to me with? Do you expect me, Bruce Dickinson, to sing this melody in this range? You know, it was. But, you know, so it's probably not you. It's Bruce Dickinson, too.
Well, I think actually, to his credit, Mike has a pretty good understanding of my sweet spot and my range. The challenge is he and Donnie actually are really bad at the breath space thing. They'll write melodies where I'm like, look at you, you know, it's like, you can't, I gotta, you know, so there's 2 things. I mean, you need to be able to breathe. But you'll know too, like, I mean, I can sing high, but I'm not invincible. Like, I can't sit and sing high. You know, I don't know technically, like, I'm not some classically trained singer, right? To me, I just liken to it's almost like you're stretching or pinching the vocal cords and they get fatigued, almost like if you're lifting weights and it reaches the point where your arms like can't go anymore. That's what your throat's like, and you need that. You need to be able to bring it down. So bring the melody down. That'll help, or just take a breath, you know, and have some space.
Yeah, and also like the connection between the lyrics and the part of the range that you use, because it's like, you know, and it's about, you know, the sweet love of my life, you know, it's not gonna be very convincing.
Yeah.
I actually. Sorry.
I was just gonna say pronunciation of words and stuff too, you know, so like. You really want to call the song this, but like it's got that E pronunciation in it, and you're trying to sing up high and E, and it's like E, and it's like it just doesn't sound it, you know. When you sing high, you want to start going to the open sounds. Oh, you know, whatever. You definitely don't want E.
I just had like a month ago. I had a meeting with the songwriter of the band. I mean, Cantis, and he, you know, he's. You know, starting to get things together for a new album, and he just wanted to check the melody. So I was sitting there singing melodies I've never heard before, you know, just trying to sing along, and so we were having like a Zoom meeting like this, and he was like taking notes and was like, no, not like that, you know, and no, that sounds like shit, and no, this needs to be higher. But he is, to his credit, Tony is very careful, like you say, about finding the sweet spot, and and that's the worst part about his songwriting, but also the best part, because he never gives up. So if he has a part and he hears me sing it, and it doesn't fit, then he's like, okay, I'll rewrite the song for you. And I kind of admire that, because he really,
willing to redo it.
yeah, because he knows that this can sound amazing, but but then we have to change a lot of other stuff. So I respect him a lot for that. I mean, for a guitarist to be so careful about the singing, that's a bit rare.
I think, for me, though, I sometimes feel like the opposite's true. Like, you reach a point where you're beating a dead horse. Like, listen, we've tried 4 or 5 different versions of choruses on this song. It's just, it's okay, but it's just not great. Like, let's just move on. You know what I mean? That happens now and then, too.
Yeah.
You just, it's just not going to happen.
But would you say that you have a different approach to, because I mean, Riot V, I mean, is it 14 albums that was released before you joined the band, which is impressive, very much impressive in very many ways. But would you say that you have, I don't know, this is one of the questions I thought about a lot that might be a very long or a very short answer, because we had different singers on the old Riot albums. Yeah. And now you have 2 albums of your own, with vocal lines written for you specifically. Could you talk a little bit about, when you were going on a tour and when you were going to sing the songs, do you have like a different way of approaching them depending on what singer it was? Or is it just like, okay, this is the Todd version? Or do you feel like you're leaning in a certain way depending on what Riot singer sung it first? I don't know if this is one question or a million questions in one, but
no, I think it's a good question. And I have no idea if to someone's ear they're noticing a difference, but I feel like I can notice a difference when I hear it. But first of all, like, if I think of Guy Speranza and I think of Tony Moore, those are 2 people where their voices are pretty naturally, or my voice is pretty naturally similar to theirs.
Yeah.
And so honestly, for them, I just go out and sing it. I feel a little bit like I'm trying to make it sound like Guy. Honestly, the Tony Moore is even more so. Like, I guess I'm trying to make it sound like him, but my voice is, it's not really similar because he has this really different kind of cool tone that I don't have. But I mean, as far as the high stuff, especially, I feel like I almost sound like him. I don't know, in a way. So, and hopefully that's a compliment to him. I don't mean that to sound slightly. And so I don't feel like I really have to affect my voice much. Now, Rhett Forester, he's got a rasp to his voice. And frankly, I do try to put a little bit more of that attitude. I mean, I think with Rhett, it's more like attitude. It's swagger. That's what Donnie will call it, swagger.
Yeah.
And got that rasp. And, like, I'll try to put a pinch of that in. I can only do so much, And frankly, I would be a little scared to do too much live, because the only way I know how to add rasp is to kind of overamp my voice a little bit. And I just can't do a whole Riot set night after night after night if I'm overamping my voice, so I have to be real careful with that. I would say that Mike DeMeo, he's definitely got a different tone. I don't match his tone at all, but like, it depends on the song. But like if you look at a song like oh my God, Angel Eyes, if you listen to the beginning, he's got more of this kind of round sound. So I try to, maybe somebody told you, and I'm not making fun of him at all, but I mean saying he's got that kind of a round tone. So I purposely do that same thing on that song because I want it to sound more like what he did. He did a great job on the song, and I don't want to Toddify any of the Riot material. I want it to sound I want it to sound as much like the original as I'm, capable of doing. Because I feel like, first of all, I respect the previous singers. I think they're all awesome. But I also respect the listener. Like, I feel like the person that's in the audience is good. I mean, my God, you've been listening to Fire Down Under since 1981. You've been listening to Thundersteel since '88. I mean, you got this imprint on your brain. The last thing you want is some idiot like me coming out and doing it different. I mean, that's never been my thing. I know for some people that's their thing. Like I really loved like the first Counting Crows album, the first couple Counting Crows albums, and I don't know if you've ever listened to them, but Adam Duritz, I think his name is. Man, I saw them live one time, and I remember one time like he was singing a song, and like it wasn't until he got to the chorus and I listened to the lyrics that I was like, oh, that's this song, because that cat changes the melody so much, like live, and like that's cool. That's kind of his thing, and that's why people say they're awesome live, because every show is kind of unique and different that way. But for some reason, like for me personally, that's just not the kind of guy I am. I wanted to. I'm a little more of a technician. Like I feel like I want to technically accomplish the song the way it is. I want the notes right. I want the speed. You know what I mean? And so I'm a little more of a technician in that regard. And I just want to try and make it sound like the original. I want it to sound as close to the album as I can. Not that it's ever going to sound that perfect, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But would you say that you're hearing their voices in your mind when you're singing it?
You know, it's weird because, you know, I've been in the band a while now, and we've done quite a few shows, like I'm sure over 100 probably. And we've actually got a few live recordings too. So, I mean,
two live albums.
Yeah. And well, and we had that, but we had recorded the Keep It True festival one time, and I've heard so many live recordings of us doing it that I'm to the point where it kind of feels like it's my stuff now. Like my voice sounds kind of normal on it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question. But I would say no. I mean, it depends. Maybe I would say probably that DeMeo song is the most one, that because I feel like I'm affecting my voice. But the other ones, when it comes to Guy Speranza and Tony Moore, I don't feel like there's a lot of affectation I have to do on my voice to make it sound like it's supposed to sound. So those seem really natural to me.
That's kind of awesome, like that you kind of come to the conclusion that this is yours now, because sometimes some singers seem a little bit afraid to me, you know, approaching old stuff. So on a psychological level, I think that's awesome.
I think for me, you know, I've always taken the responsibility, because I mean, I remember listening to my brother's band jam Fire Down Under and singing along with it in the basement, you know, when I would have been really young. I wasn't when the album was brand new, but I think I'd have been like 13. So the album was a couple years old. And so, I mean, I've just, and I remember listening to Thundersteel way back in the day. Like, I didn't own the album and listen to it a ton, but my brother John owned it, and he listened to it a lot, so I heard it a lot, you know. And so I think for me, I have such a respect for the music and a love for the music that I took my responsibility very seriously in being in the band. Like, I want to try and make it sound as great and as much like the original as I can. And now that I'm in the band, I don't know, I guess, I mean, there's some people that, oh, you're a tribute band, or it's not really Riot unless it's this, or it's not that. I mean, you know, if that's what you think, that's fine. I mean, we're just, you know what I mean? Like, look, we're creating this music. We're creating new music. We're also keeping the old music alive. We're doing our best to make it sound great. I mean, Donnie was way back in '84, and Mike's been in the band since '89. And if you feel like this isn't the real band and you don't want to listen, you don't want to enjoy it, I mean, I respect that opinion. I mean, that's fine. But I mean, at the same time, like, why not? Like, why not give it a try and listen to it? I mean, I've literally had, on more than one occasion, I've had grown men tell me afterwards that they've cried listening to me sing, you know, Blood Streets, because it just brought a lot of emotions back to them of when they were younger and all this kind of stuff. And like, that means a lot to me. I mean, that's not that I'm so impressive, but like the song and my ability to take them back to that original song that they were thinking of. I mean, that's my goal. And so that means a lot. I take it very seriously. But I do kind of feel like, I don't want to say I feel like it's my band, but I do feel like, yeah, it's not my band in the sense. I really feel like it's Mike's band or Mike and Donnie's band.
Yeah, but you're in the band.
But yeah, I feel like I feel like I'm the guy right now, because I'm the fifth, you know, right? So there's been other singers, but I feel like I'm certainly the guy of this era. And I feel like, you know, I feel like I've done a good job singing the stuff live. I remember originally being pretty concerned about whether or not I could pull it off, and I've really like played so many shows of those that I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but I mean, I've been impressed with my ability. I mean, I've done like 8 shows in a row, like 8 nights in a row with them before, and it managed to keep my voice pretty darn healthy. You know, I did the 25 shows in 30 days with Primal Fear. I even got kind of sick during that tour and still managed to kind of keep my voice pretty darn healthy. And I mean, I'm really proud of that, you know, because to me, that's an important part, playing live.
Yeah, and singing next to Ralph, you know.
He's amazing. He's first of all, he's one of the, you know, it kind of cracks you up because first of all, he's huge, right? And he's this big, muscular dude. And
yeah.
And the first time I ever met him, I kind of met him, but I don't know if I really considered it a special meet. We played the 70,000 Tons of Metal, and we were standing in line with the artists, you know, getting loaded on the ship. And this was the first time we played there. And I remember, because I knew him, because I had one of their albums from back in the '90s. I remember one of my guitar players, Todd Walraven. He said, "Oh, you'll love this album," and I had that album. And I remember seeing Ralph and thinking, "Oh my God, that's Ralph Sheepers," and like kind of standing next to him, and I kind of wanted to make some small talk with him, but he's a little bit intimidating. You know, he's kind of big, not necessarily incredibly tall, but he's just big, and you know, just had more of a serious look on his face, and. But so what was interesting is then, you know, years later, obviously 2018, when we get on this tour together, you know, he had the bunk right above me on the double decker, and he and I got to know each other really well. And my God, he's just the sweetest, nicest man. And talk about a singer. I mean, that guy he's got an incredible voice, and a really powerful singer. He's like a very, like, the way I survive live is like I'm not a real loud singer. You know what I mean? But he's, you know, I listen to him warm up and stuff, and man, he's a loud, powerful singer.
Yeah, and just a side note, talking about loud and powerful singers, we got Daniel Hyman joining in here.
Nice.
From Lost Horizon. Yeah, but yeah, you know, I've done backing vocals for both you and Ralph, actually. So, but I can tell that there are some qualities in both voices that that you share, both of you, with what you would call the powerful stuff. But like I told you earlier, the ability to keep the same sound throughout the entire register, and that is what I think takes a lot of experience, especially to do it live, not to fall into you know, the habit of you know, screaming or pushing too much whenever you're singing very loud or whatever. And actually, here we have Tony too. And he also mentioned that he's been very, very inspired by Riot. So he was very happy about this, you being
Tony,
here.
Which
Tony? Yeah, Tony, the guitarist in Cantis, the songwriter.
Yeah, nice.
So, but yeah, but one thing that a fun thing about the Aldaria album where I did the choirs for you, I remember because I actually checked. I wrote you when I started to work on the choirs, and the funny thing was that I was doing. I always do the dubs. You know, even if there already are dubs, I always dub, and what made me think like I was doing something right was that I almost got phasing problems when I dubbed your voice because it sounded so alike, and to me that is tapping my own back, you know, a lot. Nice. Because I realized that this is, and I say this with all the respect I have, this is how I want to sound. Because I've heard you sing before, of course, but you know, and you also know that listening to your own voice on isolated vocals, you know, it can make you feel down a little bit.
Yeah, well, you have to get used to what your voice sounds like, you know, and
yeah.
And I remember when we first started recording, but I mean, I was really young when I first started recording, thinking that's what my voice sounds like. But I'm to the point now where I'm really used to what my voice sounds like.
Yeah,
so
you can listen to it from the outside, kind of.
Yeah.
But you know, still with the amount of singers that I've heard in this way, and that list. I could do a name dropping list, but some of you sound amazing even on isolated tracks, and I would definitely say that you're one of them, because I could listen to only your track and like, I don't need any music for this.
Well, thank you. I guess that helps because I do some of those a cappella songs, you know, so that helps, I guess. You know, it's interesting because I was actually, I'm working on doing some final mixes on some songs too, and it's more just singer-songwriter stuff. But there's some stuff where I was singing really low, and you know, I was listening to my tone, and it kind of had a bit of a, not a gravelly element, but it had a bit of a something in. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize I had that when I sing lower. But it's more of a love song. But I'm, you know, now I tell a sad story. You know, I was like there, but I was listening to the recording. I'm like, oh, because I get so used to hearing my voice high all the time. You know what I mean? Because let's face it, when you're in rock and roll and it's like got a high energy mind, you're not going to come in and go, oh, da, 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 da. You know, you just don't do that. You're going to come out going, yeah, you know. So,
yeah.
But so what's funny is I do have a low, like deep. I do have a kind of a thick, deep, lower voice too.
Yeah, and your speaking voice isn't that super high either. It's not like you're talking up because you have a. Now I made you aware of it, so now you will think of it.
Yeah. Well, this is. I mean, that's more. I think that's more my relaxed tone. You know, if I'm trying to chill out. But yeah. And so I think that's the thing that sticks out weird for me. But a lot of times with my more singer-songwriter stuff, I'll sing low, whatever I think is the mood. You know, fits it. You know, so it just depends. But I you know, really like my Sonic Healing album. I listen to that, and I don't feel like there's a lot of high singing everywhere, although there is some hard singing. Like if you listen to Running After You, you know, like the chorus on that's a pretty hard chorus to sing. I mean, because the note is like right at the peak of what I would call the chest voice, you know what I mean? You know, it's that, you know, so I'm belting that thing to sing it. Whereas I can sing a lot higher than that, but I'm sure you know too, you know, when you go from your chest voice into your head voice, there's that little break point, and you're not very powerful for your head voice until it gets higher. And so that's a tough area to sing and to nail that. Like with Riot, that's like the Blood Streets note, you know, if you listen to the Blood Streets chorus, that, you know, is that's kind of in that same type of range. Because
in comparison, like the chorus of Overdrive would probably be a lot easier. Because
that one, that one doesn't feel hard to me. That's kind of very natural Todd singing. That's just like, I don't know why that one's not hard. And I guess, maybe that is head voice. I don't even know. I just sing, you know, I don't want to say something that sound arrogant, but I'm kind of just blessed in that I just sing and I do it. And there's little problematic spots in my voice, and there's songs that I would hate to sing, you know, like Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. I would absolutely hate to sing that song. It's just not it doesn't fit my vocal pocket at all. So there's some songs like that. But in general, you know, just kicked my camera. In general, anything that I want to do, I just kind of sing it. There's not really a limit, so to speak, because I mean, any higher, like if you go to the high end, like, you know, people are, well, what's the highest note you've ever sung? Well, okay, I mean, probably the highest I've really sung is maybe like a B5 at the end of Evil Never Sleeps or something, and I guess technically I hit a C6 before, but like I couldn't imagine ever putting that in a song. Like, where would that sound good? You know, even, you know what I mean?
And kind of what's the purpose?
Yeah,
you know,
so
what I want to do.
Yeah,
why
do I would say the same thing on the lower end too. When it gets down really low, it's like, oh, you know, like, okay, where am I going to put, you know? So when I say that, like, I don't mean it to sound like I've got like a range that's so huge I can sing anything I want, but I mean I can, because within reason. I mean, and I'm trying to sing. I shouldn't be at those really stupid far ends. Although what's tough for me is I don't always realize when I'm singing high. There's stuff that I sing where people are like, oh, wow, you know, like I don't realize, or where I realize it is I'll bring some friends in, like on the Reverence albums, I would bring friends in to help me do the gang chants, you know, and stuff. We'd sing along in the chorus, and then people would be like, yeah, no, I can't sing that, you know. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that part's higher than I realized, you know.
Yeah. But what would you say? This is a very kind of weird question, but what would you say? What do you like the most about your voice?
Wow. I don't know. What's interesting for me is I think as people in general, there's a saying that I believe wholeheartedly, but I'm not always good about not doing it. But it's called comparison is the surest way to kill joy, right?
Yeah.
So the minute
Compared
you compare,
to theft of joy, I think.
yeah,
You say comparison.
yeah,
Theft.
comparison is a theft of joy. There you go. It's an even better way to say it. And it works that way, like in anything. If you look at the clothes someone else is wearing, if you look at the car they're driving, the house they're living in, what their paycheck is, if you look at the tone of their voice, their hair, whatever, whatever thing it is. And so in that regard, I am like anyone else. So when I listen to my voice, so when I listen to someone like, we already talked about Eric Adams from Manowar and the way he could sing, or even someone like a Josh Groban, somebody like that who his tone
Adam
just like so buttery smooth. You're just like I could sing a song by Josh Groban, but it's not going to sound like him because it's just his tone. So I would say I have my paranoias about that. I think to me, I think if you have straight hair, you want curly. If you got curly hair, you want straight. I think with my voice, I think I actually am pretty in love with my clean voice, and I allow myself to be that. Because there's this part of me that every now and then I'll listen to Eric Adams do his thing, or Perry-Moore McCartney from Warrior, or somebody like that, where they can just make themselves sound almost like a machine because they got that. I can't even duplicate it all. I can hear it in my head, but I can't duplicate it all. Whatever. I'll listen to that and I'll be, I don't want to say jealous, but kind of jealous. Like, God, I'd love to be able to put that in something, but it's just not me, And I think you just have to learn to love what you have. And I think I have a really clean tone, and I don't know if my tone is incredibly unique. There's some people that have just those tones that you listen to, and you're just like, wow, that's pretty special. And I don't know if I'm there, but I feel like I'm. I can stay in key well, and I can hold notes nice and long, and I think I've got a decent amount of vibrato. I've got some without too much, that I sound like I'm warbling and stuff like that. So I don't know. I guess I'm just, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm to the point.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, this is going to sound horrible, but I do enjoy listening to myself sing. Like when I write my own songs, I really enjoy listening to my own songs because just the notion of creating them and have them come to fruition. I don't know. I really was awakened. The Letters from India album and working with Francisco, it just really awakened me because prior to that, whenever I was in bands, I would write lyrics and vocal melodies, but I wouldn't write music. And I really didn't consider myself a musician in that regard, even though I started, I took piano lessons when I was younger, and I started playing guitar in '96 and stuff. I mean, I can hack through guitar a little bit, whatever. And, but I'd written a lot of, 8 of the 12 songs I'd written back in the '90s for that Letters from India. And when I did that, it really awakened something. I mean, I had this explosion. In the next, year or two, it was a little over a year, but maybe 2, I wrote 30 songs. And I was like, wow, I just had this burst of creativity. And now, and so some of those songs were on my Elements EPs, and then I've got 14 more that I'm finishing up right now. And I mean, I just released them digitally. It's not, the problem I have is I'm a little eclectic. I love just to, I don't even know what you'd call my stuff now. I guess it's just pop, but pop is all hip hop now. So that's something different, but I don't know. It's just singer, songwriter, little pop rock stuff. And I enjoy it, although I can imagine people that are used to my heavy metal stuff are like, what is this crap? So I don't want to say I don't put it out seriously. I'm serious about it. I put it out, but I'm not off trying to push it on everybody necessarily. If you're on my Spotify and you know that I have it on there and you listen to it, you enjoy it, that's cool. I know it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but for me to go from an acoustic demo that I create or a piano line that I create and then take it to somebody like Andy Reid, who's a guy I work with here in Bay City. He and Donnie Brown would be on drums. Andy does the guitars and bass. They take my demo and they don't, it's my song. I wrote it, but they make it come alive. You know what I mean? By putting in the dynamics and doing all the instrumentation. And I really enjoy that. It's going to sound, it probably sounds egotistical, but I love listening to my own songs come to fruition because it just, I don't know, it just feels good.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you think that that's the exact thing that happens when they write a vocal melody and they kind of, you know, whatever producer it is, they have a vocal melody going on. For example, I don't know about Timo Tolkki's vocal abilities, but you know, also with all the stuff you do and all the stuff that I've done, you know, some of the demo vocals you get aren't that good.
No.
No. Recording back, don't you think they have the same kind of feeling like, okay, so now we're painting in color?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, certainly there's people that'll send you a demo and they'll say, yeah, look, man, this is just kind of a guide vocal, but I can't sing at all. And there's times when people say that, and it's like, wait, that sounds pretty good. But there's times when, yeah, it sounds really bad. And you're like, oh, yeah, right. You can't sing that well, can you? You know?
Yeah. There was another thing I was going to ask you about that, but I don't remember what it was. Give me a sec.
Do you get approached by people then to put vocals on their stuff now? Or are you starting? Because I get a little bit of that. It's tough for me, you know, because at first I was very willing to, and then just later on, I struggle with it. Part of me feels like it becomes too much, you know, like you get saturated too much, or at times I almost feel like not like I have a name, but almost like people are using you, like they just want to put you on there so they can, you know, use off you a little bit or something. I don't know. Especially when you're out of the blue by people you don't really know.
I think there are different kind of people who approach you, and by you I mean singers, because you know we're on different levels, all of us, you know. But there are singers who are, like Bilbo said, I think they're butter spread over too little bread. You know, they're everywhere. And I remember I thought about that. You know, because what I want to do is I want to do albums. I don't want to release singles. I don't want to do YouTube cover videos. I've done a couple, you know, but I want to do albums. And how can I do a lot of albums? I can't be in 15 bands, and I can't do guest appearances on albums all the time. So that's kind of how I got into the backing vocals thing, because, you know, I started to have the wall is expanding, and nowadays things happen on their own, but it used to be me contacting people, and I've learned that from doing a lot of cover gigs and troubadour thingies on bars. You know, you can't sit around and wait for stuff to happen, because if you want to play that bar, you have to call them. And same with this. I kind of looked up, like, okay, who is doing these kind of albums? Okay, yeah. It's these people. I just, you know, contacted them, and I got 100 no and 5 yes, and then, you know, just goes on from there. But I think there are different kind of people. There are definitely those who wants a name, and just to be frank, they probably, if they want a name, they probably rather go for Todd than David. But you know, or in our genre, they go for Fabio or whoever. Yeah. And then there are those who actually love what you do. They want your voice, because that's, you know, they listen to Riot or Cantis or another album, and they hear like, oh, this is awesome, I want this on that song. So I think it's different. But
I think that's how I ended up getting on the Timo's album, because Aldo Lenobile, who was working on that album, he just could hear my voice on it, on the song, and stuff. So that's kind of, you know, it's weird for me. I guess I'm really torn on it. You know, these albums that come out and there's like 5 different singers on the album and all that stuff. I'm kind of torn on that. You know, I'm really proud of Timo's album. I think the songs I was on, I think they sound great. I mean, I think the album sounds great. So don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing anything, but I'm just a little torn on it, because there's a part of me that I don't know. It feels, I don't know. It's just weird for me. I guess it almost feels like they're throwing a bunch of singers on just to kind of make the album attractive to a lot more people, rather than it being a band. And I don't know. It's tough. it's weird. It's weird for me. Like, why not just commit and find a singer and have one? And you know what I mean? There's a part of me that thinks that. And so not trying to slam anybody, obviously, but just for me personally, so that's why anymore lately I've been more like, yeah, no, I don't really have, you know, I don't really have a lot of desire to be on other people's stuff right now. The other thing is it's just a matter of time. I work full time, and then I have a wife, I have 3 kids, and my daughters are both playing soccer right now, and I love going to their games. I mean, music is it's in my free time, you know, when I have some free time, and as silly as that sounds, like I haven't picked up my own guitar and written a new song in like almost 2 years now, except for that Christmas song I wrote. But you know, so because I'm too busy and I haven't had time, and so that's the other thing is if you start doing a lot of stuff for other people, you run out of ability to work on your own stuff, and I don't know, it's weird. You got it. To me, this is a passion project, you know. I want to love, you know, I want to love what I'm doing, and sometimes recording stuff. As much as I love to record vocals, when you start doing it for other people, it starts feeling like it's more of a job than it is just doing what you love and, you know, what motivates you.
And that's kind of how I feel about it too, because either you have to pay me, and then I do it, you know, willingly, and I keep the deadline, and I do it exactly the way you want it, or it has to be something that I feel like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and that's a hard part too, because people will call you and they'll want you to do something, but it's when someone calls you, or you know, usually they message me or something. When they message me and say, "Hey, do you want to put vocals on the song?" A lot of times, lately I've just been kind of like, no, because the challenge that you have is if somebody sends you something and you don't really like it, now you got to go back and tell them that you don't want to be on it, and then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I've had people where I've told them up front, like, look, here's the deal. You can send me the song if you want, but if I say no, I don't want to do it, you can't get mad at me, because I'm telling you up front, for whatever reason, I can just decide I don't want to do this. And I tried that a few times, but it's hard because, you know, then they start feeling bad. And I'm a people pleaser, man. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You know what I mean? So it's almost easier to just say no and then not, you know?
Yeah, and just like you say, it's life happens at the same time, you know. And for me, the time I have in the studio, I have to divide it between teaching and recording stuff that I actually get paid for, and then, you know, then it's the passion projects and the stuff that I do for my own. You know, some people go golfing. I do power metal albums, you know. But so I've also had the sensation of like, it's better to be honest, because if you start out saying, oh yeah, I'll give it a listen, oh sorry, I will listen to it, you know, then you're just painting yourself into a corner. And you know, so it's always better to say, no, this wasn't for me.
And I think
like
for me
it's
too,
hard.
yeah, well, and I think the other thing too is because like I like power metal, but you know, I sing in Riot, so like I don't necessarily have a lot of need for more power metal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, and my voice really fits it though, especially the symphonic stuff. But yeah, so but that's not like like I don't want to just do symphonic power metal all the time, and even then the symphonic stuff is not my favorite power metal. You know what I mean? So it's harder for me. Like I don't know. I'm a little more. I like. I don't know why. It's weird. I love the Riot stuff I do, obviously, but I also love kind of I don't want to say more raw, but the little more stripped down metal. You know, I think of like a Dio or something like that, where it's just a little more just metal. It's not necessarily a ton of course, Dio had a fair amount of keyboards, I suppose, but I don't know. A lot of the synthetic
guitar based, not symphonic.
Yeah, I want guitar based, and I think one of the challenges I have with that burns me out is double bass. Like songs are just constant double bass, constant all the time, and that's what wears me out. That's why, like, for my solo album, that's why I was like just jonesing to do some old school rock, because I just didn't want to have something that was constant double bass. Not like I hate double bass, but it's like every song, you know, it reaches there's like a certain formula, you know, and so I can only do so much of that, or I overdose on it, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta mix it up a little.
But I mean, would you say, like, if we take Sonic Healing and we compare it with the Return to Eden, the Timo Tolkki stuff, if we say just vocally, is there, when there's the symphonic element to it, do you think in a different way about your vocals, or do you, like, I don't know even what I'm asking about, but, you know,
I
how's
know
the
what you're saying.
approach?
I think that with symphonic, I mean, in my mind, symphonic metal is more of an operatic vocal. Whereas when I listen to something like a Sonic Healing, it's more of a rock. And I'm not a blues singer by any stretch, but I mean, you know, like rock and roll has like a bit more of a rawness, even though my voice is never going to sound raw, probably, you know, just because it's so clean. But there's, you know, there's more of an attitude and a rawness to like a Sonic Healing and a rock music as opposed to symphonic. When I think of symphonic, I think of more, you know, and that's probably why my voice sounds so good on symphonic, because symphonic a lot of times is just like this perfect little operatic kind of voice, you know, that's clean and stuff. So that's probably why my voice seems so perfect for it. And which is odd, because I listen to, you know, in many ways when I listen to Sonic Healing, I think it probably could use a different voice, you know, like it's hard for me to describe, because, and I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but like I don't have a lot of raspy tone in my voice, and so sometimes, you know, with Sonic Healing, I think you could hear some of that on the songs, but you know, I am what I am. I guess that just makes me what I, you know, and so that I just play the songs the way I hear them. But you know, when I grew up and you listen to bands like Styx and REO Speedwagon and Triumph and Rush and stuff like that, I mean, they had really clean singing. There wasn't really a lot of rasp going on, and that's just what they did. And that's kind of, I guess that's where I feel like I can have a sweet spot too. Like I don't have to do symphonic power metal because I have a clean voice. I can do rock and roll too, you know. But I definitely feel like there's a different attitude for the symphonic stuff.
It was just funny that you mentioned, because the sleazy band that I'm doing 3 more songs for, they wrote me like, okay, so this first one, we need Triumph angelic choirs. So that was like kind of the recipe they wanted for that one. But yeah, but in a way, I agree with you about the symphonic and the more rock based. But I also think that in the more rock and roll based music, you get more. There's more to the vocals. There's a lot more depending on the vocals, because in a way, in symphonic power metal, you have this is. Here's the orchestra, here's the guitar, here's the bass, you know, the soundscape is different. So like I feel like the vocal part of the production in the more classic rock stuff is bigger. It has a bigger part in the song. So for me, I get more of a if I sing like bluesy Deep Purple stuff. Yeah. Because it's more naked.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think it almost seems like in the symphonic metal that basically the instrument, you know, the voice is just another instrument. You know what I mean? Whereas in rock and roll, the voice is a you are, it's like what you said, where you're kind of carrying it more. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, I definitely see what you're saying. It's you're more center stage, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see that.
Yeah. So we've been at it for a while. I just wanted to wrap it up a little bit. Do you have your best vocal memory of singing?
Wow.
Yeah, that's an easy one, because you know I'm not implying that you're very old or anything, but you have a very long career, sounding awesome throughout the entire career. So, or something that's stood out a bit, or I don't know.
I would say probably would be a lot of the stuff I've done with Riot, and more just the live shows, the opportunities of shows we've gotten to play, and we've gotten to play like these incredible festivals and things like that over at in Spain. We played in front of 20,000 people. Going to Japan, I mean, that's just getting to play big shows there. We played in the arena there a couple times in front of 10, 15,000 people, whatever it was, and feeling really special in that regard. I think that's probably would be my big memories, I'd say. But, you know, I think as far as a personal accomplishment, though, I would say probably my Letters from India album would be probably a really highlight for me, just because I never thought that I would be able to release a solo album. So the fact that I was able to do that was pretty amazing for me. So I'd say that would probably be my thinking. Maybe that, you know, those two types of things.
That's awesome. And I also think that the ability to do both of these things on such a high artistic level, that's super impressive. And I mean, we haven't even dipped our toes into the whole the voice thing, but I know you talked about that on earlier interviews and all of that. But I mean, it's to me, it's very impressive that you keep evolving. You're doing your own thing, but you're standing on your own shoulders, so to speak, throughout the entire career. Not just standing on other people's, but you know, like, I've done this, now I'm doing this. You're an artist and a singer that keep evolving, and that's super impressive to me.
Thank you very much. You know, I think that's the hard thing. I would say that you know, especially after being on The Voice and doing stuff with Riot and all that, I just like, I don't know, you know, like I don't know what more I can do. Like, there's this part of me that feels like, you know, ultimately, I want to just touch people with my music. I want to reach people with my music. You know, I want to, and I want to create. You know, like, I don't like if whatever, name a band, you know, called me up and said, hey, do you want to be the singer in our band? And there's some big name band, and all we're gonna do is go around and play all of our old hits. That's cool, might be kind of fun, but really that's not my thing. I want to write songs, you know, and I want people to love my songs. I want my songs to become the soundtrack of their life, or not like in an egotistical way, but in the sense that when I was younger, and even now in my life, there are certain albums, certain artists, and certain songs that become the soundtrack of my life, and I want to feel like I can give that back to other people. You know, I have things to say and with my music, and I think that to me is what I long for and what I hope for. And so there's this part of me that says, man, I don't know what more I can do. You know, like, on one hand, once again, comparison is the surest way to whatever. What did you say? It was the surest.
Yeah, the theft of joy.
The theft joy. There you go.
But I mean, didn't you think? I mean, didn't you have kind of the same way of thinking before The Voice? Before you decided to do The Voice, like, what can I do now?
No, I definitely did. You know, but I thought, you know, on The Voice, I mean, obviously, first of all, like, I didn't need anything to happen from The Voice. I've got a great job, and my life is set as far as that goes. I just thought it would be, you know, great exposure, and I thought, well, maybe, you know, but there's that fantasy in the back of your head, like, oh, maybe, like, I'll really catch on and have, like, a lot of people that want to listen to me and stuff. I mean, ultimately, what I would like is to be able to feel like, I think what would be, and I don't know if it's even possible, but what would be neat is to feel like I could go out and play shows as like Todd Michael Hall. You know what I mean? I mean, I love playing shows with Riot too, but there's just something different about the songs being kind of all your own, so to speak. Even though obviously Kurt wrote the music, but it's like it's more like it's kind of my thing and my band and you know, with Kurt and so I think that would be the next thing for me, is seeing if I can somehow pull that off. I think Kurt and I'd like to work on another album, but you know, I don't know. I think if anything, what I've kind of learned is, like, you know, life is kind of short. So if I have a song on my heart, I'm just going to create it, and I'm just going to kind of put it out there and see what happens. And I mean, sometimes you worry so much about, oh, I'm known for rock. If I put out this love song, is some whatever, you know, I'm not, you know what I mean? It's like, if someone's going to stop listening to me because I put out a Christian song, or I put out a love song, or I put out this, then I just, you know what I mean? I guess it's done. You know, I won't worry about it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's, and to me, it sounds like that inner drive, you know, to keep doing stuff. And, you know, once you climb this hill, you see another hill, and you want to do the next, and you want to, and I mean, to me, that's an amazing thing, to have that drive and that feeling. And if that means trying harder, doing new stuff, so be it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say at this point, I don't have a strong vision of what that next hill is, you know. Although, honestly, The Voice was something that just kind of like I was just it was almost like I was just like, yeah, maybe I'll try out, and then you know that happened. You know, it was like, oh, okay, well that's crazy. I mean, originally it was kind of like, I kind of wonder if I could get on there, and then I did. You know, right now I don't really. Right now I don't know that there's a greater thing I can do. I think maybe maybe I've peaked. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see what comes next, I guess.
Yeah. But one thing that will come next is another Riot 5 album. I know you've been working on it, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had songs written for quite a while. Just when the COVID hit thing, it just kind of created a pause, I think, in one way because didn't really want to put out an album when we couldn't go out and play shows for it. But then also, I mean, okay, I mean, I know, some people talk about, okay, you don't want to destroy the mystique. Like, we want people to think, you're a rock star and, this and that guy. It's, to me, it's limousines and it's, mansions, and it's not, I mean, I'm just this dude that goes to work like everybody else. But I love music and I love to play. I mean, I feel like I'm a professional caliber musician, but I don't make my living with music. And so, the guys in Riot are the same way. And so when that whole COVID thing hit, I think it becomes more like, we got to worry about our lives and making our living and doing what we have to do with our families and stuff like that, and my business, and rather than necessarily music. So I think that put a major pause on it. I'd say that's the weirdest thing for me is like, I don't even really, like, November is 2 years since I've played out live with Riot, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any shows till next year. Maybe April, I think, is the first show. It seems like it's coming, and so in a way, like, I don't even feel that musical right now. I've been tied up with work and stuff. I haven't written a new song lately. I haven't done, because that whole Sonic Healing album I wrote all last year. So I don't know. I almost feel like I'm not in music right now.
But I mean, for the next time we're going to talk for an hour and 45 minutes, I'm going to ask you about preparing for tours. Yeah.
Oh God. I
but
talk
yeah.
way too much. I'm sorry.
No worries. I mean, to me, it's very interesting, and that's the thing about all these interviews that I'm doing. I call them interviews. I mean, it's like shit talking about singing mostly, with all these amazing singers that I've been had the opportunity to talk to. But I mean, for another time, the preparation rituals for live performances, touring, that's for next time, I think, because
well, we probably ran out of any listeners at this point because I talked so.
There are a couple of people left, but I'll post this online afterwards too. And I've had a lot of people writing me about this. Looking forward to hearing it, and me personally too.
Thank you.
So,
thank you for having me on, and God bless everyone that tuned in. I really appreciate the support. So.
Certainly. So I want to thank you very much once again for joining in, and have a good day. And for me, it's good night.
All right. Sounds good, David. Talk to you later. Peace out.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.